And what's up? Simulation Clearly Podcast is back. And in a world of nano weapons and robotic mosquitoes, I'm bringing you an episode to calm down your mind. Let's just take this shit back to the simple days, you know? Just brewing beers and cooking food. All these fucking assholes are sitting around dropping all this money to make robotic mosquitoes that will just somehow one day be used as some form of mass murder and population control. Too much? Fuck it. This episode 24 of the Simulation Clearly Podcast, I am super fucking stoked to bring Marcus Baskerville, who is the head brewer, mad scientist up at Weathered Souls Brewery here in San Antonio, Texas. And this man is brewing some fucking delicious beers. It was super cool to sit down. We got to sit down, have a cool conversation, drink some of his beers. And I had been up a couple times to try to run into him up at Weathered Souls to grab him and get him on the podcast, and it finally worked out. So I think everyone will enjoy this episode. We get a little dip into the mind of the mad scientist himself, the guy who's putting out, in my opinion, some of the best beers in San Antonio. So I hope you enjoy the episode, and thanks again for everyone who's listening. Stay positive, stay strong. Too much wild shit going on in this fucking world. But yeah, take a listen to the episode, and thanks for all the love, guys. Here you go. Okay, goddamn, I'm excited. Marcus, we got Marcus on the podcast, the mad scientist running shit over here at Weathered Souls. And it's a beautiful day. We got some beers, and I'm gonna pick your brain, brother.
Sounds good. How's everybody doing today?
So, first off, I want to start by saying, dude, this facility is fucking beautiful, right? How do you feel every day walking up in this place and just getting to do what you love, brewing beautiful beers in a place like this, man?
Well, no, it's definitely a nice facility. Thank you. Personally, though, I mean, you can kind of brew in anything. So
yeah.
We would open the shack somewhere. As long as I had my brew equipment, it would have been all right. But, we have some wonderful equipment. It's held to keep it clean all the time. So, I mean, there's that. But, it treats me well.
You start going larger scale, more cleaning, man.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, more especially going from 7.5 gallons to 20 barrels, it's a huge difference.
Oh yeah,
it works out.
So let's talk about that. So everyone wants to know. I mean, this is a common thing. People who are inspired to brew, much of like myself, who is I'm at no level that you're at, and a lot of people are at. But I love beer. I love the art, and picking people's brains like you who are more established and have way more experience. I always like to know, how did they start? What is intriguing to you about craft beer, and how did you get started on this journey, man?
Well, I've been drinking beer for a long time. So I'm 33 now. I think I've been drinking craft beer anyway since I was 22. I'm originally from Sacramento.
Okay.
Northern California, heavy craft beer influence, that type of thing. Started out with most Northern Californians and Sierra Nevada and that type of stuff. But then as far as brewing goes, that was actually out of pure competition. So I have an older brother.
You competitive guy or what?
Very competitive.
There you go.
So I have an older brother. And he had received, I think, one of those Mr. Beer kits for Christmas or his birthday or whatever the case may have been. something. And so he had brewed a beer and it came out horrible. So it was like,
shit.
yeah, it was horrible. And so it was one of those things like, well, I could brew a better beer than you. And so I ended up buying, you know, just some little cheap makeshift equipment. We used some stuff he already had at his garage, and pretty much I didn't even brew by myself. We ended up brewing together. We did a couple of beers and it didn't go so well. So I ended up moving to San Antonio. I used to be a fraud manager for Citibank.
And when was this in San Antonio?
I moved to San Antonio mid-June was 6 years, so I've been here for 6 years now.
Okay.
Yeah, so I moved here, took a promotion with my job, and found myself kind of bored out here. Got in a car accident, didn't have a car for a while, and so I ended up spending some money on some brewing equipment.
It's an odd thing.
Yeah, I mean, you know, I was kind of already
invested. Get a new car, or let's start brewing some beers.
Get some brewing equipment. Luckily, my job was only 6 minutes away from my house. So
there you go.
That decision wasn't too hard to make. So ended up getting some brewing equipment, ended up, you know, starting to brew more. Got to a point to where the first couple beers didn't come out the way that I kind of wanted it to. And so at a point I almost quit. Then the girl that I was dating at the time, which is now my fiance, she told me basically like, you spend all this money on this equipment, yada, yada, yada.
Oh, shit.
Yeah, you're not going to quit. Yeah, you're not going to quit. Like, you need to keep with it and see how it goes. So the next beer that I did was a robust porter. And that beer came out pretty tasty.
What did you brew previously to that? What would you attempt to brew?
It was a lot of IPAs.
IPAs?
Yeah, a lot of IPAs. Huge IPA fan. So
I'm right there with you.
Yeah, I think the first attempt we tried what the name of that beer? Hop Slam clone.
Okay.
Yeah. We tried a honey IPA first time. And, I mean, it was drinkable. Right. But to the standards of, like, say, what we're doing now, or, you know, even as a world-class home brewer, like, it wasn't that great. So, basically, she kicked me in the ass, got me back on track, brewed a good beer.
That's a keeper right there.
Well, that's why she's my fiance now.
You go.
And kind of went ahead and just kept with it. So, at that point, I was brewing about a beer every 2 weeks, beer every 3 weeks, just to try to get my foot under things. Once I started producing a couple of beers that I thought was, you know, good, started bringing beers like around some of the local bars, different things like that. So like Missions Untapped, who, you know, rest in peace, they're no longer open, but you know, they were one of the first supporters of like our homebrew, different things like that. Big Hops, of course. And so basically, you know, kept bringing them to different places, and I started bringing my beer to a local brewery, and so they let me have like a home brewers night at the brewery, and
did you approach them about that idea?
So it was kind of mutual. You know, kept bringing them beer, different things like that, and it was like, oh, we're gonna put something on tap. So they actually, you know, featured like a home brewers night, had a few different beers on tap that went over well, and so I ended up getting a part-time job as a like assistant brewer there while I was still working for Citibank. Worked there for about a year. Found that I wasn't really happy because I was brewing somebody else's beer, brewing somebody else's recipes. You know, you didn't get to implement any of your procedures or policies or anything like that into the brewing process, and so you get kind of stagnant with what you want to do.
Right. And it's not your creative process either. And
exactly.
That's kind of a big thing.
And so, and at that point, you know, no knocking at them, I felt like, you know, my beer was capable of being featured at that point, you know. So, needless to say, we ended up finding an investor who was invested in the brewery that I was working for at the time. And so we both ventured off and opened our own place. So that's how Weathered Souls.
Is that person you're talking about, Mike?
Yes. So
Michael. How did you originally meet Mike?
He was an investor at the other brewery I worked for, and so we used to do a lot of drinking together, you know, hang out, that type of thing.
You saw some promise in your brewing?
Exactly. And so we were at a bar one day, and I was like, when are we going to open a brewery? And a matter of fact, it was Missions Untapped. When are we going to open a brewery? And he looked at me and was like, I've been waiting for you to ask me that. And then literally probably the next week we ended up, you know, starting the planning process.
That's a beautiful moment then, huh? That's one of those, he's like, dude, what the fuck took you so long, right? It's like that moment clicked. Those are the moments that are like, that you remember, and now you're at a point, at the point, say you're not right now, and you can bring up those past moments, and that's the beautiful shit right there. That was the moment that was like, oh fuck, like, let's get these gears rolling, let's get it going,
Yeah. So now we're almost a little over a year and a half now. 2 months over our year and a half, and things aren't going too bad.
I wouldn't say so, man. So let me ask you this: whenever you first started brewing beers, the first couple ones you did, most of like any endeavor that we take on, it's a learning process. You're supposed to fail and fall on your face. That's the point of it. Yeah. So you learn what you fucked up on. You learn how to get better. Did you feel? I mean, you'd mentioned that you had a competitive nature in you. I know that it was just with your brother, but outside of kind of that family element or your brother's element, did you feel that you possess that competitive nature in like the beer world as well? Like you wanted to get those beers out. Obviously you did the legwork yourself, going out and trying to put those beers out there, and you had the confidence in what you were brewing. But
I entered a couple competitions, I think, as a home brewer. So okay, I'm one of those people that I'm not going to enter a whole bunch of competitions because I'm always going to think that my stuff is good. So I'm going to be upset, like, So
you don't want to be judged, is that what the problem?
I'm going to be upset if I don't end up winning or whatever the case may be. And I know a few other brewers, I won't say any names, that don't enter competitions specifically because of that. But, as far as it goes for me, I entered a few competitions as a home brewer. And I want to say we did pretty well. First competition, I think I ended up getting the second place. It was for a...
What did you brew?
That was for... First competition was a stout. So it was an imperial stout with coffee, cocoa nibs, and vanilla beans and cinnamon, I think. Something along those lines. I've always been a huge fan of imperial stouts and different things like that. And, Cavernous, that beer's literally been getting perfected for about the last 5.5 years. Yeah. Stout competition, entered that. I think I've got a second place. Next competition was a local competition here in San Antonio. I think I got a bronze. And then the last competition I entered, I think it was for another stout, and it was another gold. Those are the only 3 competitions I entered. As a professional brewer, we haven't entered anything yet. We are going to enter GABF this year. Oh. Kind of see how that goes. I'm only doing one beer, though.
What are you doing?
We're going to enter our barrel-aged Cavernous.
Okay.
But, competition-wise, basically, if you hold everybody at that type of weight where you're trying to be on a competitive nature, then you become pretentious and cocky and that different thing. So I don't...
If you're holding a hammer, everything looks like a nail.
I don't particularly say I'm in competition with anybody, but internally I'm in competition with everybody.
Right. Yeah. In your head, you're ready to fuck everybody up.
I don't know about that, but it's like, we gotta try to get ahead of everybody. At least locally. Coming from me, sort of this, what intrigues me about beer is you'd brought up the fact that Cavernous is like this project, that it's not just a one and done thing, and that's what intrigues me so much about brewing beer. That's why I feel like I can associate the word art with beer, is because you've been working on Cavernous for 5-6 years, like you said, and it's almost like there's an infinite amount of possibilities that can come out of brewing just one beer. It's never a finished product. Never. No,
and that's what's so cool. Because every single batch is going to be, the littlest changes, the smallest additives, they can twist it to where it's palatable in some strange different way, you know what I mean? And that's what's so cool, man. It's like I equate it to like something like fucking jujitsu or like rock climbing or some shit. There's like so many different ways and different limbs and different angles to look at things, and it's almost overwhelming in a sense to think about all those things if you get ahead of yourself. But that's a big thing that I find fascinating about like craft beer, or just about brewing beer in general. Is just it's such a unique representation of the person who is throwing that shit out. The person that's brewing that beer is, it's as unique as they are. You know what I mean? And and you can equate that to a lot of things too. food. Like I said, jiu-jitsu. I use the things that I'm into, like jiu-jitsu and rock climbing and shit. So those are things that I'm equating it to. But that, I like to hear those things, people that they're not one and done leaving a project behind, but they're always, it's always in the back of your head. You're always tweaking it.
Yeah, you should never get complacent. Anytime, nothing is ever perfect. So as a brewer and as the person that I am, every time I drink something, it could be good or, it could be great, but I'm always going to feel like, hey, this can be better, or this needs to change, or, this time I'm going to do this or that, or whatever the case may be. That's why you only see like a certain consistency with some of our products. You're always going to see consistency as far as the quality, but you might see some different nuances of the beer. You come a couple of months from the last time you were here, and that's because we're always trying to better things, trying to update things, trying to make things better. So like with Cavernous, you can see the evolution of that all the way from the beginning of when we opened to now, to where the viscosity of it has changed. We lowered the roast character of it. There's more of a chocolate backbone to it. So there's a few different little things that you change each brew day or each time you brew it, and hope for the best or see what happens. And then if it doesn't always work out, then you can go back to where you were previously and go from there. But so far we haven't had any problems with that beer.
Are you aware? This is a fun fact of the day. You can share this with whoever you want. But are you aware that cacao has DMT properties in it?
I did not know that.
Yep, there's actually a lot of things have DMT properties in it, but cacao actually has chemical compound properties of DMT, which is pretty strange, and they bind to your own biological DMT receptors in the body, which is strange because how people talk about these feelings of like happiness or even being an aphrodisiac, like when you eat like dark chocolate. Yeah. And it was for a long time, people were wondering why we get so hooked, or why there's this feeling of, this kind of instant gratification after eating chocolate. Why people are, they talk about people are. I'm a chocolate fanatic. I love chocolate, but I actually read this article the other day about how dark chocolate has levels of DMT in it. Okay, this is pretty strange. So the next beer you brew with cacao, figure out a way to put DMT in the name of it. It's pretty cool, man. So let's get more into these breaking down your process of brewing beers. This is what I want to know. This is what people will be interested in hearing. I actually had a buddy my buddy Josh Munoz. I don't know if you know. He's the bartender at the Growler Exchange off 410 and Broadway.
Yes.
He's a photographer as well. Okay. But he was the first person I had on the podcast. Okay. But I called him last night and I'd asked him, I was interested in knowing what he would like to hear from out of you. And one of the things that we both kind of agreed on was, what is your approach in breaking down a beer, the process of building a beer up? What are you focusing on? Is it just depending on your mood or what's involved in your life? What are you focusing on? Say if you're brewing an IPA, what are you looking at first? Are you looking at how different hops are going to interact with each other? Are you building it by focusing on the end product? You've catching where I'm going with this?
Well, as far as IPAs, it just all depends what type of style you want to brew, right?
Right.
So here, particularly, we focus on West Coast style IPAs and hazy IPAs. With both of those IPAs, typically the first thing that we focus on is our hop. What hops we want to use, what point we want to put them, in the beer, what the focal point of the aroma, the flavoring, what you're looking for. So typically, depending on a recipe, usually starts with the hop profile, and then from there we'll go yeast profile, right?
That's what I want to know. Like, what is the hops or the yeast that you're focusing on, especially?
It's mostly the hops. Okay. We cycle the same yeast through here, pretty much. I use 4 yeasts here: Mexican lager yeast, California ale yeast, a Vermont yeast, and high pressure lager yeast for one of the other lagers we use here. But besides that, we typically stay within the 3 strains of, well, for IPAs anyway, it's 2001 and the Vermont strain that we use. So being said that, you're going to get a similar yeast profile to all of those beers depending on what you're doing with them. So most of the focus is usually with the hops. Now that the hop profiles are kind of changing within these beers, people don't want something as bitter. When are we going to add these hops late in additions? Are we going to add them in the whirlpool? Are we going to add them in the dry hopping process? Are we going to dry hop more than once? Am I going to recirculate these hops during the dry hopping process? It just kind of depends on what we're looking for as far as the beer, and kind of what crowd I'm looking for as far as the style that I'm putting out.
Right.
Especially because we're in such a easy drinking beer city. You kind of have to a mass produced beer city. Dos Equis, the #1 beer in San Antonio, you kind of have to tread lightly as far as what you introduce and how you introduce it.
Right.
So dealing with the West Coast style, for instance, I might go ahead and release something that's on a little more maltier and not as bitter, right? So that gets those people drawn into wanting to drink those beers, and then that's when you push the hot bomb towards them and like, okay, now that you've kind of
got him in the door.
Got into the door of
then you smash the real shit in their face.
Like, here's a real IPA, try this. So I mean, it just really depends on the consumer and the customers and who we have kind of coming in at the time.
Yeah. So let's say that you're wanting to brew maybe this cavernous project. It doesn't have to be just IPAs, but are you focusing on the end product and are you building it backwards? Like, what is it?
So yes. So a lot of beer I brew towards what I like, right?
Okay.
So I know with a stout, I like thick, chewy, viscous, nice chocolate character to it.
You mean DMT character, right?
Some raisin undertones, little tiny roast, not anything overbearing because I don't like smoked beers. Okay. So with cavernous, it's okay, this is what I like. So what do I need to do to produce this beer, right? So dealing with the viscosity, you need to do a long boil. You need to add some additional flake doughs. We add some additional stuff to the boil to build the body. Different little things like that. I know that I like chocolate more than I like smoke, so you're going to obviously use more chocolate malt than you're going to use of the roasted variety. Different things like that. So it's just kind of to the point to where your finished end product and how to build that beer from the beginning to produce what you're looking for.
Yeah. Let me ask you this. This is something that's kind of I've been reading a lot of articles about this lately, and it's sort of interesting because the structure of the hop, the species of hops has somewhat similar properties to the cannabis flower.
Same family, yeah.
Right. So more importantly, what you can equate it to is like those organoleptic properties, which is just taste and smell. Yeah. And it's real similar. And so you've been seeing some of these breweries popping up, like Lagunitas, and New Belgium did the Hemperor. Mm-hmm. There's a few other ones out there. A lot of breweries now are infusing CBD terpenes into their beers. What's your opinion on that? And have you had any experience with that? Are you interested in that?
Well, again, I'm originally from California,
yes.
So I am very pro.
You can tell I'm
cannabis.
Trying to drag some shit out of you right now.
I mean, I'm very pro cannabis. I don't have any issues with it. People smoke all day. Hey, that's what you want to do. That's what you want to do. As far as hemp, CBDs, different things like that, it's all experimental. I mean, it's no different from adding some of the additional ingredients that other people add into the beer. You're not going to get a high out of it. So, I mean, why not see what it does?
Right.
Why not see what type of properties you get out of it?
Well, and the flavor profiles and the smell, they're very similar to to a lot of hops.
Yeah.
Hops.
So actually, I want to say, was it Colorado? I think it's Colorado where they're implementing. The government there is implementing where you can only use so much hops within a beer now, because now these breweries are using 6 pounds per barrel in dry hopping, 8 pounds per barrel in dry hopping, and this is post boil, right? So now they're like, well, because it's so close to the cannabinoid family that they're like, we don't know what the internal factors of using all these hops are going to do, and blah 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 blah. So there's some new research going on that. So I mean, you can even see that with hops. But as far as it goes, hey, if people want to put cannabis in the beer, go ahead and do it. Now, if it was legal here, that's probably something I would have already tried. But we can't.
Well, you can use hemp products.
Yeah, we can use hemp CBD derived. Not yet, but
you can't use CBD.
I don't think we can use CBD here in Texas. I know that they just started allowing for medical use.
No, you can, because I actually did a podcast with David Burrows, who owns Alamo Botanicals, which is the first CBD dispensary in San Antonio. It's actually in Stone Oak.
Yeah, but I want to say that maybe. I'll have to do some research on it.
I think it was 2 years ago that it was passed that hemp-derived cannabidiol is legal in all 50 states.
Okay.
But cannabis, so male-derived cannabidiol is legal, but the female part, which is the flower.
Yeah, the flower.
So there's a THC threshold that has to be under 0.08%, which is not even 1/10% of THC. So you're not getting any psychoactive effects, but you're getting. I mean, you're getting the flavor profile, maybe a little bit of the smell, and actually there's a lot of good health benefits. Although you're drinking beer, which it's a lot of sugar and calories. Besides the point, you are getting some of those health benefits from those cannabidiol terpenes that they're introducing into the beers.
Okay.
But I was just curious, because we can see in the next 5 years that's going to be a whole nother level of brewing that's going to pop up.
I think so.
It's going to be
definitely.
It's going to pop off.
And then you figure those states that do have marijuana legalized, there's already some breweries that are implementing actual marijuana into their beers.
Exactly.
So we'll see what happens and where the market goes. And now, if it's something that we can do here, of course I'd want to try it. Here we try to stay ahead of the experimentation and do a lot of different things away from like your typical styles of beer. So,
right.
Hey, the opportunity pops up. Why not?
So have you never experimented with trying maybe like utilizing even just CBD in beers, or
I haven't.
terpenes or anything like that?
I've always felt like that was a waste. Like,
I know how to use this shit properly.
Exactly. If I'm going to use that, then hey, I'm going to use it for something else.
That's pretty funny.
Yeah, but
no, because I've been noticing, because I'm actually going to be in Colorado next week. I'll be back in Colorado. I'm a weirdo. I like to go camping by myself in the mountains where I could possibly be eaten ass first by a bear. But I did notice, the last year that there are these people experimenting with the flower particularly, and I just think that it's so strange that we have these lines that are drawn in the sand that this place can utilize a certain ingredient, but this place can't. And it seems like the only reason, the only regulations that get placed on certain things that we're allowed to put in our own bodies, that's regulated by people we don't even fucking know who they are. It's only the shit that is enjoyable that's regulated.
Well, it's always a money grab.
You know what I mean?
They got to figure out how they can make money off of it first before they make it legal for us.
It's not the shit that's going to kill you.
Exactly.
It's the shit that, they're pushing the shit that's going to kill you, but the shit that's not going to kill you, that's just enjoyable, that's going to make you, you can live your life fucking...
Nope, you can't have that.
No, it's crazy, right? That's a strange thing, is like, we get in these situations where there's a couple of fat, disgusting old white dudes sitting around a fucking table deciding what we can and can't put in our bodies. And at a certain point, it's like, man, my parents stopped telling me what I can and can't do when I was 18. So what the fuck are you doing, man? It's like, if you want to be the person that can, you want to shove some stuff in your body, then that should be up to your own. That's your prerogative, like, do what you want to do with it. But it's just strange that there's going to be these, we're going to see these opportunities, and in my opinion, another way to elevate, the art of brewing beer. Some people are going to be more, some of the resources and the growth is going to be more accessible to other people who are in these areas that are a little farther ahead than where we are at now. You know what I mean?
Yeah, that's true.
And I guess I'm just ranting because I'm fucking angry about shit like that, because I don't like you're competitive. I'm sort of competitive, but I just have this bigger thing where I don't like people telling me what I can and can't fucking do.
Understandable.
I just, I'm not into it, So I was curious to your opinion on these cannabis infused beers. Have you seen that there's I don't know if you're familiar with what kombucha is.
Yes.
Have you seen the kombucha beers?
Yes.
Have you had any?
I have not. My sister drinks kombucha, but I haven't really gotten to the benefits of it.
Yeah, I probably drink one of them a day. I
have really terrible stomach issues, so I probably should. You
definitely should do that.
That's what people have been telling me.
It's all about your gut biome, man.
But I haven't gotten into it yet. We actually, my brewer's assistant, we were actually trying to get him to possibly get into learning how to make kombucha so we could put it on tap here. But let's see what happens.
I brew kombucha.
Oh, okay.
I'm actually trying to work on right now. I want to brew a habanero kombucha, a spicy kombucha, one that'll kick you right in the throat, man. Because there's
That's an oxymoron.
there's so many. The health benefits. People that listen to the podcast, they're gonna be like, God damn it, shut the fuck up already, because I talk about the importance of the gut biome all the time. And I don't know if you know this, but those mood regulating chemicals in your body, the dopamine and serotonin production, those are all produced in your gut. And so if you're putting shit food and garbage in your stomach and you're not taking care of your gut biome, you're going to have a bad ratio of healthy to negative bacteria.
Okay.
So that's where these kombuchas come in. Each one of these kombuchas has billions and billions and billions of these tiny little strains of bacteria that go in there. It's like an army you're throwing in your fucking body, man. And so to go back to it, I think it's called Good Heart kombucha or something like that. But I had tried some of the beers, which is essentially what they're doing is they're fermenting in after the fermenting process, then they're extending that process by adding hops to it. So it's kind of a late in the stage of so it's still a kombucha. I don't know how they really get off saying it's a beer. I guess maybe because it has an alcohol level high enough to content. Say, and they're utilizing some hops in it for that real piney and earthy kind of taste. Mm-hmm. But they're not bad, man. Okay. You can get they're not getting up there to where they're real low in alcohol. I think that, but the strange thing I noticed about it is. I don't have like that real, like when you sit here and drink a shitload of beer, sometimes you wake up the next morning and get that tied stomach feeling, mm-hmm. And I didn't feel that. I drank a couple of them and I didn't really feel that like whole tied stomach thing, and I thought that was pretty interesting. It's another way. You can go to Whole Foods, you can find them there at Whole Foods, and probably go to like other places like Total Wine or something and find some of them. But it's a strange concept. People are finding different ways to brew beers or just brew in general, mm-hmm. no matter what it is, and it's really creative. So I might have to bring up some of that, some kombucha.
Yeah, bring some bar.
That'd be cool,
I'm definitely down to try it.
So it's 4th of July coming up. What's going on over here, man?
I'm taking the day off.
Oh.
I don't work holidays, but we'll be open. I want to say we're open from 12 to 10 tomorrow. We still have, I want to say, 6 or 7 different little specialty beers on tap from last weekend. We just had a dual bottle release. So, things should be good going on here. Me personally, though, I'll probably be at home smoking a brisket or something.
Yeah.
Taking a nap.
So you're cooked too, huh?
Yeah, a little bit. They kind of go hand in hand.
Absolutely.
So I chef it up a little bit.
Woo.
At least I like to think I do.
There you go, man. And so as far as like the special release I guess schedule goes, it's Thursdays that you're pushing out these special releases, right?
So every Thursday we release something new.
I've seen some Saturdays too that I've been up here for a bunch of Saturdays.
Depending on my mood, we might release something else on a Saturday or Friday, but always Thursdays.
Right.
We've been pushing out a few different bottles and can releases now. So those are typically Saturdays. Like we had a dual bottle release this past Saturday that went really well. So yeah, Thursdays and typically Saturdays. I'm gonna probably start doing a few different little silent releases every so often. So 150 bottles or something of this or that.
Yeah.
Release them randomly. But we'll see how that goes.
Well, as far as we're gonna wrap this up in a sec, man. But on the horizon, man. You have anything you want to drop exclusively? Anything in your head? Any ideas that you're going to start tackling? Anything that you're going to start trying to, dip into that you want to throw out there? Tease a little bit?
So we are starting our mixed fermentation program.
Oh, man.
So we've done a couple little, low volume sours just to kind of see how they've gone, where we've kept them in the back of the warehouse or whatever, and we released a couple magnums for our 1 year anniversary last year, but now we're officially starting our mixed fermentation program. So I've only been in the brewing industry for 3 years, but I've been drinking craft beer for years upon years. So upon that, I've been able to develop a few different friends, and some of those friends are some of the top sour producers in the country.
Right.
So luckily, I've had some pretty good lessons on what to do and how to manage our yeast and barrels and whatnot, and we'll see what happens.
Oh man, I'm excited, man. That's beautiful.
Pretty excited about it too. It'll give another element for the brewery to where just from our normal offerings and stuff like that, but it'll also give us something else to release as far as bottles and start trying to push some beer out to the masses.
Absolutely. Well, Marcus, thanks so much for doing this, man. I'm glad I ran into you or stalked you, whatever you want to call it. But thanks so much for being on it. A lot of people, are going to love to hear, kind of dive a little bit into your mind, because I mean, like I told you already a couple times, man, I think you're brewing the best beers in San Antonio.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
I've turned a lot of people on coming over here, and I'm definitely grateful to people that brought me here first. So thanks so much for doing it, brother.
Oh man, thank you for coming by. It's appreciated.
All right, everybody, make sure you check back. Podcast will be available here coming up pretty soon on Stitcher and Spotify. Don't forget iTunes. Stop slacking. Go rate, review, and subscribe. You can always find the podcast on YouTube, like always. And thanks for all the love. I have a lot of people reaching out. Thank you so much. Telling your stories means a lot to me. And let's push the podcast. Go on there and make sure that you rate, review, and subscribe, like I said. And that's really how we get traffic going through these platforms. So thanks, everybody. I hope you enjoyed the episode.